Welcome to the Head Trash Show. My name is Alexia Leachman and I'm the founder of Head Trash, home to the new and unique head trash clearance method that removes unwanted negative thoughts, feelings and emotions quickly and effectively so that you can achieve clarity, confidence and contentment in your life. My goal with this podcast is to teach you how to create some headspace by helping you to unpick what's blocking you and sharing some tips and how-tos for clearing it. Tune in every week as I share simple strategies to help you to achieve confidence and clarity in your life and business. To find out how to clear your head trash quickly and effectively using our unique method, pop over to headtrash.com to get our free download and subscribe for our free head trash clearance updates. And now for the show. Hello and welcome back to the Head Trash Show. This is me, your host, Alexia Leachman. Now, in today's show, I'm going to be following on a little bit from last week's show. And if you didn't hear it, then let me just give you a little bit of a recap. Well, first of all, it was pretty mind-blowing. But why was it mind-blowing? Well, I spoke to epigeneticist Charan Sador, and she shared with me how your thoughts, your values, your beliefs, your emotions, your feelings, all that stuff affects how your genetics are expressed in your body. So just because you have the gene for cancer or a heart condition or diabetes, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're actually going to get it. Actually, what determines it, what's a very important determining factor, are your thoughts, your feelings, your thinking patterns, your behaviour patterns, your beliefs, your perceptions, and all that stuff. And actually, that's where the work needs to be done to prevent those genes from expressing as disease in the body. So that's pretty mind-blowing stuff, I think you'll agree. And if you haven't heard the show, then please, I'd urge you to go back and listen to it because it will certainly make you stop and think. And that's what it did to me. After I spoke to her, it really got me thinking. I wondered whether or not there are certain emotional patterns that lead to certain types of disease. And so that's what I decided to try and find the answer to. And that is what I've got for you today. Now, here is a little taster of the chat that I've got coming up for you today. Just listen to this to get a sense of what you've got in store.
That disease gets pushed into the body, or rather the mental or emotional conflict gets pushed into the body because it's too painful to live. And it's at that point it could produce anything. So different kinds of emotional pain create different kinds of physical problems.
So already Jenny is saying that certain types of emotional pain lead to certain types of problems in the body. Oh my goodness. So that you've got to hear more. You've got to hear what Jenny's got to say because it's absolutely fascinating. But before I hand over to the time that I spoke with Jenny, I just want to find out where you're at with letting me know what your head trash is. Remember, I'm going to do a show very soon, unpicking your head trash. But for me to do that, I need to know what yours is. So just email me at hello@headtrash.co.uk and let me know what you're going through. So for example, let's say you get really stressed by the people at work. You might email me and say, hey, I can't bear it when my boss is always doing this to me. What is going on? How can I stop myself from getting in a right old tiz when my boss treats me like this? Or maybe you've got major stresses at home because the kids are leaving an absolute mess everywhere because your partner speaks to you in a certain way that just really winds you up and you want to stop feeling that way. So anything like that that really affects your ability to remain calm, to be able to behave in the way that you like with the people that you love, and to put your best foot forward and show your best version of yourself, then let me know what that is so I can help you to unpick it and clear it. Okay. So back to today's show. So I was fortunate to find somebody who could help me understand a lot better the mind-body connection, and that person is Jenny Lynn. Now, because Jenny uses a heap of tools to do the work that she does, even I was confused and I didn't know how she described herself, and I thought maybe she was a psychotherapist, but she isn't. So here's how she describes the work that she does. What are you? Are you a psychotherapist?
I'm a psycho. I often describe myself as such. I am a psychotherapist, a hypnotherapist, a counsellor, a coach, an EMDR practitioner. In fact, so many different things. I prefer to call myself a transpersonal therapist, really.
Transpersonal therapist.
Yeah, let's go for it. Why not?
Yeah. So what does that mean, transpersonal therapist?
Good question. I think it means really that you're working with the person rather than their symptoms or with who they think they are. You're getting right into the person, you're going transpersonal across the person and into their very core. So it's kind of less symptom led and less, oh, what's your problem, how can I help you, and more about treating the whole person.
And it sounds like it's less technique led.
It is much less technique led. However, I do use techniques.
Yeah, but rather than coming like, oh, I'm an hypnotherapist and I'm only going to use hypnotherapy with your problem, no matter what the problem is, you've got a load of techniques at your fingertips and you look at the whole person, you bring forth the technique that's going to fit what's going on.
Exactly. So, that's the benefit of being multi-skilled, if you like, or multi-trained or whatever. But it all really rests upon the therapist or my level of insight into the person that I'm working with. Because if I were technique-led, then I would only be as good as my techniques. But if I'm actually led by my own insight, then my techniques serve me.
So as you can tell, just by listening to the way that Jenny describes the work that she does and how she works with somebody and all those methods and techniques that she uses with her clients, Jenny really is somebody who's brilliantly placed to help me to understand much better the mind-body connection. So when I spoke to Jenny, I started off by asking her to tell me exactly what she means by the mind-body connection.
Okay, well, first of all, most psychologists or psychotherapists or people that work with the mind need to define what the mind means and where it is and what it is. And the truth is we just don't know. We have no clue where the mind is. You can't test where the mind is, so you don't know what it is. So what you're really looking at is almost psychic soul stuff and how who we are as people affects our physical body. So that's just to qualify the mind-body link, because we don't really know what the mind is. Is it our thoughts? Is it our beliefs? Is it our feelings? What is the mind? Where does the mind sit? So I think the first thing to really qualify with that whole mind-body thing is that we're not talking about just our thoughts. We're talking about a whole concept of who we are as people. The mind potentially is much deeper than just our thinking.
So the essence of who we are.
I think the essence of who we are, what we've learned in this lifetime, how we do life, what kind of thoughts we think, it's very difficult to qualify what we mean by mind. So what I would like to say is that the mind is just that. It's actually this much more global idea of we as people, how we do life, what we think, what we believe, where they come from, what our families believe, how we fit into that belief structure within our families. So it's a huge, vast area. So just to condense it down, if we can, it's just to say who you are in the world, how that affects your body.
So why is it that you've got a personal interest in the mind-body connection? What's your where are you coming from when it comes to the mind-body connection?
Right. Well, obviously I'm coming from my own personal experience alongside lots of clinical and technical experience I've had with people. But my first, I think, clear experience of the mind and the body, my mind body working together, was when I was about 29, and I used to suffer from psoriasis quite badly all over my body, which is this horrible scaly condition on the skin. And I went through quite an epiphany very early on in, I think it was 1993, where I kind of, I saw my life stretching back to when I was a child, and I realised how much I was harming myself. And, I don't mean in any physical way, but I was causing myself a lot of pain, emotional pain and hurt. And when I saw this, and I decided it really was time to let it go, and I really felt completely forgiving and let go of this pain. For the next 6 weeks, the psoriasis on my body just evaporated. It just disappeared until there wasn't a spot on me anywhere. So I knew that the mind-body was already linked up to that point. It's just I hadn't had any personal experience of it. And at that point, the transformation was evident. It was more than evident. And the way I understood it was simply I was letting go of stuff that I'd been reluctant to let go of emotionally. And as a result, it was coming out in my body. That my skin was saying to me, if you want to imagine that my skin could talk, my skin was saying to me, stay away, I feel ugly. And all the while, I felt ugly. I didn't want people too close to me. So I put up this shell, layers of skin barrier between me and the world. and I pushed it away. So that was my first experience of mind body healing. But I've had several others. One was IBS. That was a number of years ago. I got rid of a whole load of anger. On neither of these occasions did I think, oh, I really must heal my body now by getting rid of my emotional baggage. But it just so happened that when I cleared my emotional baggage, I suddenly noticed that my body responded differently, completely differently. And my most recent healing has been a breast lump that I had in my left side. And this time, because I'd had the experience of mind body healing, I thought, right, I'm just going to absolutely go for the full mind body experience and see if I can heal this lump. And again, I went through another process of self-discovery and forgiveness and all that business. And I would say within 3 months, this lump was fairly pea-sized. And now this is 2 years on, it's gone.
Wow.
So, this is the power. If you have enough faith in yourself and in your ability to heal, then you can do anything. You can heal from anything.
You went very quickly over, well, I did a lot of self-love and all that business, you said. But what kind of stuff were you doing to heal yourself with the lump in your breast? Can you share a little bit of what you were going through, what you were doing?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well, it was getting bigger and bigger. I had this lump for a number of years, and up until the time I really realised I had to do some work on it. It was huge. It was like a golf ball. And I thought, oh bugger, I really ought to do something about this. And it didn't help that my partner, who's a doctor, was just really, really leaning on me to go and get some conventional treatment. And I thought, I'm not going to do that. I haven't come this far. I didn't get where I am today by going through to conventional route. So it was on the one hand, it was foolish, but it was also brave. But the first thing I started to do was, obviously, you go through all the fears. I'm going to die. I'm going to die young. My daughter's going to be without me. There's something terrible going to happen to me. What if the treatment kills me? What if I can't cure it? And you go through all those terrible doubts. And what I had to do was, because I practiced Buddhism, I had to just sit with those fears every morning. So I used to sit and chant every morning with those fears and just examine each one of them one by one. And what I did with each of the fears would say, well, what if it happened? What then? Then, whatever the outcome for that was, what if that happened? What then? And what if that happened? What then? So I just sat with these big fears and feelings of, helplessness, as you do when you suspect you may have cancer of some sort. And each time I started to dig a little bit deeper, I was revealing more fears and more fears and more fears. So, underneath cancer, in my personal experience, if it were cancer, because I didn't ever have a test, I must say that out loud, because I didn't have a test, all I can say is that it was there for a number of years and getting bigger. But so I kept revealing all of these fears, and then I started to look at, my life in general, and I was thinking, how do I live my life? What is it about the way I live my life that may not be healthy for me? What am I causing? What kind of stresses am I causing in my life? What are my fears all about, really? And what I saw I was doing at the time was I was living a very mentally aggressive life. I live on my own with my daughter, and I'd kind of taken on the mantle of dad and mum and business owner and worker and trying to keep all the balls in the air working. And I was giving it a lot of stress. My mental life was very stressed. And I realised that I was actually being very masculine about the way I was running my life. And if you know anything about Eastern healing systems, the right is the feminine, the left is the masculine. And my left side was really suffering. No, the other way around. I think the right is the masculine, the left is the feminine, and my left side, which is the feminine, was really suffering. And of course, it's suffering in the place where we nurture, which is our breasts. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm really, really damaging my life here. I'm being very, very aggressive, not outwardly, but mentally with myself and the expectations, and very demanding of myself. And I started to realise that I was missing life, actually. I was missing out. I wasn't enjoying my daughter. I wasn't enjoying my free time. Everything was a trial. And I thought, oh my goodness, no wonder I'm frightened of dying if I'm not living. So it was quite a complex sort of system of inquiry, really. And I just had to have the courage to sit with it and really, really explore what was going on for me and how I was damaging my own life, how I was harming myself.
So how long did that process How long were you sort of going through that journey of inquiry and meditating and facing your fears? What kind of time frame were you talking?
I started doing that at the end of September, and I would say by the end of October I'd had quite a breakthrough. And the breakthroughs happen when you feel sad. This is quite a strange thing. They happen when you feel sad and sorry. The moment you feel sad and sorry for what you've been doing to yourself and your life, then you can actually release the things that you've been doing that have been harming you, and you can affirm that I want to live a more grounded, a more settled, and a more happy life. Because really, if I weren't afraid of dying, because that's we're all going to die eventually. But if I weren't afraid of dying, gosh, what would I do with my life? I'd do anything. So I think that breakthrough came probably around the end of October, possibly the beginning of November. And then the sadness and the releasing of the loss and and everything. And then I think by Christmas time, I consciously started to think, I don't have to die. I don't have to choose to have this lump in my breast. I can recover because I've got nothing to fear. I don't have to fear about it killing me. I don't have to fear about going to the doctors and having needles and being out of control and not knowing what the process is and blah, blah, blah. I don't need to fear anything like that. Because if I'm not afraid of dying, what am I afraid of that for? And the moment I lost that fear, that lump started to heal.
Right.
And by Christmas, it was peace-sized. So that was the process I went through. And that was a really important process that I went through, because it taught me not only that I can spontaneously heal mind-body, but that I can willfully heal mind-body. Do you know what I mean? I can cause that to happen.
So in terms of your work, as because you use you work with people with a number of techniques. Some of them may be hypnotherapy, psychotherapy, EMDR. There's a number of techniques that you use. Do you sort of actively work on the mind-body connection with your clients as a result of your experiences?
If they've got a physical disorder, you mean, of some sort?
Yeah.
Yes, I can do. What tends to happen is, if I'm working with the real core of the human being, then the disharmony between the mind body just shows up in any way. It just comes up because I work transpersonally, which means I work with the person rather than with their symptoms or with a technique. And when you start working with the person, you actually can hear very clearly the conflict that they live and how it's manifesting in their body. That might sound a bit woo-woo and a bit otherworldly, but when you're attuned to your own body in the way that I've become attuned to mine, you can just hear when other people aren't attuned to their body. And as a result, I will do whatever I feel is necessary at that moment to bring insight into the person and how the mind and the body isn't working together. Just bringing harmony to the mind and the body will cure the disease. Well, I say cure, it will start the healing process. Okay, it may not cure, it will start the healing process. So it's quite difficult to say whether I use a technique to help them. Yes, of course I do. But I think also we're looking at the actual core beliefs, who they are as people, and where they're at odds with themselves, where they're not in alignment. I can give you an example, actually, of somebody, if you'd like.
Yes.
I had a lady come through early this summer, maybe May time, and she hadn't come to me for any physical problems. She'd come to me because she was really quite angry and upset and depressed, and there was a lot going on for her. But she also happened to have MS. She told me that her legs didn't work in the morning, and she could walk, but she was very stiff in the morning. She'd had it a number of years, etc., etc. On our first session together, she experienced a bit of a breakthrough, which it's always a miracle when people have a breakthrough early on in their sort of number of sessions with me. But she had a breakthrough where she realised she was holding on to a lot of resentment and a lot of anger. It was directed to one of her family members. And the following week I saw her, she said, "Why are my legs working better?" And I said, because you're learning to forgive and release stuff. Each week that went by, her legs were better and better and better. And I wasn't even working on them. We weren't working on the legs or the MS. But by the end of 8 weeks, she was fully able to jump out of bed in the morning and run around, as you would normally expect to be able to. And we hadn't done any work on the legs at all. But what we had cleared was an awful lot of sadness, resentment, anger, futility, sort of helplessness that had gone out of her life. Now, the thing with this lady is her legs weren't working. This lady normally was very, very compos mentis, very together, very, very matter of fact, very structured, very, very tangible. And all of this mental, emotional stuff was too much. She didn't want to go there. It wasn't her stuff, wasn't her bag at all. So what she'd done is she'd pushed it as far down into her body as she possibly could to keep it away from her conscious mind. So when they say, you're filling your boots, or where do you put that food? Is it in your legs or whatever? I think there's a lot to be said for some of the idioms that we come out with in our language, like, oh, my legs, I can't walk forward, or whatever, I can't go forward in life, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That somebody's carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders, or somebody else is a pain in the back.
There you go.
That kind of thing. And also, like, I think, I've had eczema in the early part of my life, and I tend to think of that as being, I was tearing myself apart inside because I had these inner conflicts and I had these inner things that I really needed to resolve. And actually, I was literally tearing myself apart through my skin, and as I resolved more of my own emotional stuff, my eczema is subsiding, and to the point where it's hardly visible now, because I've kind of been working so much on my own emotional stuff. So I think a lot of those idioms, like you say, they're actually describing very loudly and clearly as to what's really going on for us. And sometimes we just put them down to cliches, don't we? We don't actually listen to what the words are.
Exactly, that's right. And also, there's a new word that's been banding around. It's been around a few years at the moment. They call it the bodymind. I don't suppose you've heard that, where the body and the mind are one. And I think it was Candice Pert who is a neurobiologist, and she says, she's known as saying, I can no longer distinguish between the mind and the body, because from a neurotransmitter point of view, the mind is the body. The moment the mind starts to activate, it goes into the body and down the neurotransmitters. So we are our bodies, and our bodies are us, our mind. So, if your mind is unhappy, if your very being isn't comfortable, then the neurotransmitters from a pure physical point of view are going to be firing off in all sorts of directions, doing stuff they shouldn't be doing, or sending chemicals they don't need to send, or whatever. I don't know all the science, and I'm sorry to sound a bit glib. But, if anyone wants to read Candice Pert, she's an authority on neurobiology. But, I think, the body is the mind. It's the body-mind. And, these expressions over time haven't arisen for no good reason. They've come out of many, 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 many centuries of folk, folk wisdom, if you like.
Now, you've obviously worked with a lot of people on this kind of stuff. So have you observed any patterns or themes emerging as to, sort of typical symptoms that arise as a result of certain types of emotional upsets?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Ooh, do tell.
Well, as unpopular as it is, I shall talk about chronic fatigue syndrome, because it is something I've been working with for 12 years and more. And in my early days, I had no idea what it was. I didn't know how to treat it or what it was, so I didn't treat it. Just on my, transpersonal idea, I just treat the person. But what comes up again and again and again with chronic fatigue is I am no good unless those people tell me. So it's a constant seek for approval, acknowledgement, and a fear of being rejected and not being worth anything. So those kinds of issues come up with chronic fatigue, even when they're completely unconscious, because not many people with chronic fatigue can or like to admit to those kinds of vulnerable feelings, because they're very vulnerable. It's not good to admit to those feelings, and nobody would want to admit to them, really. But even when they're unconscious, they're still there. So even when you get these very angry people saying, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with me," or, there's nothing wrong with my mind. No, there isn't anything wrong with your mind. Just like there's nothing wrong with a person with cancer's mind. It's just that if you want to get well, then we need to look at the mind and how it's impacting on the body, as much as we need to support the physical body, The other thing I've noticed is Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease in the bowel, a very, very dangerous condition in the bowel. I've noticed that there's an awful lot of outrage and anger suppressed in the gut. So you'll often work with somebody who has Crohn's, and if you're doing any hypnotherapy with them, there'll be explosions of anger, or failing anger, if that's not allowed, deep depression. Because, I often say that repressed expression equals depression. So, the more you disallow angry feelings, the more they'll be stuck in the body. What else have I noticed? MS, often a case of it's not fair. Life is unfair to me. It's deeply unfair. There's something not right. And I would say that this happened with my lady recently. And it's happened with, several half dozen other people that I've worked with MS. IBS, of course, you've got all that repressed feeling again, that kind of, choked anger that won't come out or comes out in a very rational way. Insomnia, if you want to look at insomnia as a physical disorder, it isn't really. I think it's mental emotional, but some people won't have that. But insomnia is really about having a checklist of things to do in your mind and just being angry and outraged and upset and sad and being very confused mentally. And the only time that you get to really mull that over is at night time, because the rest of the day is too busy. So, I often say to people, just do a diary. Just switch the light on in the middle of the night and diarise everything you're thinking. And, 8 times out of 10, I'd say that cures it.
Yeah. Okay.
So
it sounds like it's, there's a lot of suppression of emotions, of denial, of really allowing yourself to express that emotion and deal with it. Is that the recurring theme here?
Totally. It's about giving yourself permission to be all that you were meant to be, and not hiving off parts of your character or your personality that you think, because they're not really, but you think are unacceptable to other people. We were born, I'm not a Christian, I'm a Buddhist, but we were born perfect. We were born as human beings, fully endowed with every human characteristic there is. On the Buddhist, the Buddhism that I practice, we chant to a scroll called the Kanzen, and on this particular scroll, there are the 10 states of life, and the 10 states of life are from the darkest of hell up to the highest of Buddha wisdom. And all of those different states of life are in all of us, and they're all valuable, all extremely valuable. But what we tend to do is we tend to say anger's completely unacceptable, I'll just have to put that to one side. I can't accept this part of me, put that to one side, and so on and so forth. So we end up with a truncated idea of who we really are. So the more we celebrate ourselves in our entirety, with all of our warts and all, and we embrace that and understand that that's our possession, it's ours, it's the only vehicle we've got in this lifetime is this body, then we start to heal. And it's a process of forgiveness and releasing and staying present and being all that you were meant to be.
So somebody who is authentic, who sort of owns who they are, who accepts themselves, warts and all, who sort of owns their brilliance and the bits that they're not so proud of, but is happy with who they are, is less likely to experience dis-ease within the body. Is that a fair assumption?
I think you could say that's fair. It's less likely. However, as you probably know, consciousness is very multifaceted. There are things deep in our consciousness sometimes that we're not aware of. So just because you're like that doesn't mean you haven't got stuff hidden somewhere. So if you think, you've got some kind of disease, anybody listening, for example, have got some kind of disease, but they are authentic, they're totally sorted, they're totally together, and you don't understand why they've got it, so they must be the exception.
Right.
Don't just accept that you're the exception. Do try and at least access some of the deeper layers of consciousness, because you may have something lodged quite deep that isn't affecting your day-to-day life. But I think generally speaking, Alexia, is, you're right. Generally speaking, the more engaged and the more accepting of yourself that you are, the less likely you're going to have disease.
And so you mentioned that, that some stuff could be quite deep. So, for example, you might be sorted today, but, when you're a child, maybe you repressed some stuff, you buried some stuff deep, and that stuff is just churning away at a very deep level and could be grown without your knowledge, and suddenly it kind of makes itself known in a very serious way, as here you are today. And so maybe you do need to revisit some of that suppressed stuff from maybe your childhood or an earlier part in your life.
Yes, it can be, and and that may be hugely beneficial, even if it doesn't cure you. Because what we're really looking for, everyone needs to die. We're not immortal. What we're really looking for is acceptance and authenticity and just grace. We're looking for grace, really. So, if you're near the end of your life, for example, and you've done all that work, you're going to feel an awful lot happier about passing than if you hadn't done that work. We often say in Buddhism that the moment of death is the most important moment of your life, because what you take with you out of this life and into your next life is where you start. It's where you start. So if you're resolved at the moment of close on your life, then you can start your next life, with a relatively clear slate. So that doesn't, that's a leap of faith. I'm talking about a belief system now that many people may not buy into. But what I'm saying is that cure or disease-free states of life isn't necessarily the ultimate goal. It's that state of grace, authenticity, wisdom, power, something coming from within you, that transformation that will make your life so much more enjoyable, however many days you have left of it. Yeah. So, I'm careful to say that, because some people listening, may have a disease and they just haven't got the energy to do battle with it. Do you know what I mean? They don't know where to go with it. But I think anything you do that helps you grow in humanity is going to help you, whether it cures you or whether it just sees you through your last days more comfortably.
There's a wonderful video doing the rounds on the internet at the moment of a gentleman who's 43 and he's just found out he's got pancreatic cancer and he's got 3 to 6 months, and he gave the last speech of his life. And I think if you Google last speech of your life, it's the most inspirational, wonderful. He looks healthy in the speech. He's doing press-ups and showing how fit he is. He's probably fitter than his audience, and showing that actually the reason he's doing this speech is for his kids. He's got 3 young kids, and the grace and the energy and the inspiration that he delivers in that 5-10 minutes that he gives his speech, I think is exactly the kind of thing that you're talking about. Because yes, he might have only 3-4 months to go, but my goodness, the impact that he's had. And when I think about the starting slate he will have in his next life, he's a formidable man to be able to stand there and inspire and be such an inspirational person at that moment in his life when he's only got months to go. He wants the last few months to be magical and leave memories for his family. Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful, and it's a message to us all, really. To face your final days with courage, wisdom, and compassion. To face them in that way is a huge message to us all. Instead of this terrible sort of "I want to live forever," "Oh my God, I don't want to be ill," "Oh, what's going to happen?" Do you know what I mean? That kind of very fear-based living that most of us live by. And to be fair, most of the drugs companies and medical systems buy into. We've got to cure you at any cost. We'll cut you about. We'll give you drugs that half kill you as long as you survive. So it does feed into that fear of dying, I think, the way that we're marketed to, according to medicine. So if somebody's listening to this and thinking, oh, I've got that niggle, I've got this thing that I haven't been able to shake for several years, and I've got this, this ongoing condition that nobody seems to be able to sort. If somebody's sort of got something like that they're wrestling with, and it might not be a serious condition, but certainly it's affecting their quality of life to some degree. What would be your advice to them to help them to kind of uncover what might be the source of this?
Well, the internet is a great resource. Okay, so the first thing I would do is look for alternatives to medicine. That's the first thing I would do, because we know what medicine can deliver. It's reasonably limited. It's reasonably narrow. We know where medicine is going to take us. However, there are many, many hundreds of thousands of alternatives out there, or maybe not hundreds of thousands, but many, many, many dozens of alternatives out there that could give you some really tangible relief from disease if you knew about them. So first things is just do the research. Don't give up until you've found some answers there. The other thing is I would consult me. I certainly wouldn't put it past people to go and find somebody who's going to be able to guide you where you think you could do with some healing. If anyone listening has identified with an emotional trauma or emotional bitterness or resentment or fear or anger, as we've been speaking, then do your best to clear it. You don't want to end your life like that. You really want to clear that. So hire a really good mind-body therapist who knows what they're talking about. Don't just go to counselling or your average hypnotherapist. I'm sorry, but you need to have somebody who's fully aware of that whole sort of psychic, and I use the word intelligently, hopefully, that whole psychic exchange between the mind and the body. Because that is where some of your healing will take place, quite aside from any other physical, healing, alternative healing thing that you can find on the internet.
So really, to start looking at where you might have those emotional upsets, those conflicts, those events that may have happened in your life that may be slightly traumatizing in any way, and to see where, look at the emotional source that could be linked potentially to that, but actually work on that anyway, because you never know, that's going to make you a much happier, more accepting person anyway, right? Yeah. But you never know. I mean, I was working with somebody just a couple of days ago on issues of sort of being ignored and not being listened to. And during the work we did, he said, I've just had a big twinge in my leg, in my right leg. It's just gone a bit, and now the twinge has kind of fizzled out and fallen out my toe. And I said, oh, right, okay. I said, and has that leg ever given you problems in the past? He went, oh, yeah, it's always. I've never been able to walk properly on that leg. And since then, he's emailed me to say, hey, the leg's fine. It's gone. It was all to do with that trapped emotion around not being listened to and being ignored. And I get that a lot with the work that I do with my clients, where somebody came to me once saying, hey, I want you to help me clear my spots. I was like, that isn't the kind of work I do. I'll work with you on emotions. And we worked on the emotions, and by the end of the work, all the spots had gone anyway.
That's right.
Because we'd worked on the emotions behind, what's creating that. And so, the work that I love seeing that. I love hearing from clients' stories when they tell me that there's physical stuff that's kind of passed. It's like an added bonus for them. Not only are they happy, but now they've got less dis-ease in their body as well. This
that's
stuff
right.
really works. It really does work.
That's right. Yeah, that's an amazing story, actually. That's a beautiful story you just told about the leg there, because it's true. I had an Asian man come to me with paralysis in his legs. He could walk, but he was very very unable to walk, and the doctors had done all the tests. There was nothing wrong with him, so they sent him to me. I knew from talking to him that he was never going to tell me what was wrong with him. He was never going to actually confess why he was unhappy. It was very clear to me that he was unhappy in his marriage and in his relationship. He had young children dependent on him, but he was never going to tell me. And until he was prepared to speak to me, then those legs were going to stay exactly as they'd always been, because that's where he'd stored, like your man, that's where he'd stored his stuff that was unacceptable. Yeah.
And until he can face it himself, you can't help somebody who won't help themselves. So he's going to be staying stuck like that. Well, this has been absolutely fascinating, Jenny. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, I could talk about this all day, as you can tell, but I'm conscious of time. So if anybody wants to find out a little bit more about your work, where can they find you online?
I'm in several places, and I'll give you two references. One is theopenmindtherapist.com, and that is a supervision mentorship site for my colleagues, so my hypno-psychotherapy colleagues. And the other one is openmindtherapy.co.uk, and that is my one-to-one website. So that is for anyone who's seeking one-to-one sessions with me.
Okay. And how can I find you on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter. My handle is Jenny Lynn. So just the letter A in the middle of my middle name.
Fab. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Jenny. It's been absolutely fascinating hearing your stories and finding out a little bit more about the mind-body connection. So thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
You've just been listening to Alexia Leachman here on The Head Trash Show. If you enjoyed the show, I'd really appreciate you leaving a review here on iTunes. And don't forget to pop over to headtrash.com to get your copy of our free 5 Steps to Clearing Head Trash guide. So now stay tuned for upcoming episodes and more tips and how-tos for clearing your head trash and reclaiming your headspace. Until next time, bye for now.